Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Pluto's Crafts and Crimes, aka Aisha. Hi. So today we're making capybaras because I want to make them for my gachapon machine. So I'm going to make a bunch of those because this one's very long. We're going to be talking about the Kyoto Animation Fire. So Kyoto Animation was built in 2007. It was founded by Yoko Hara and Hideaki Hara, husband and wife. It was one of Japan's most acclaimed anime studios. That studio was best known for Free, Clannad, and K-On! Kyoto Animation was 2/3 women. It was largely known for having the most women hired at that animation studio, where the field is predominantly leading by men. The studio was also known to pay its workers a salary instead of getting paid per assignment. It was also well known to have a healthy work-life balance, whereas much of Japan's work-life balance is basically non-existent. It was Kyoto's Animation Studio 1 building that was burnt down and set on fire in the Fushimi Ward on July 18th, 2019 at 10:31 a.m. Japan Standard Time. Kyoto Animation had received over 200 death threats leading up to the attack. President Hideaki stated that they didn't know where the threats were coming from as they were sent anonymously, but they had sent them to their lawyers and to the police previously. In 2018, the National Police Agency was informed. Officers were temporarily posted and patrolled around the office of Studio 2, which is where the president was located. Shinji Oba was from Saitama, Japan, and he was born May 16th of 1979. Oba's father was a school bus driver, and he had 6 children with his first wife. He did, however, leave his first wife for a kindergarten teacher, and had 3 more children, his second being Oba. Oba's father did commit suicide in 1999, and Oba cut off his family shortly after. No reason why, he just didn't want to deal with them, I suppose. There's really no other early life history of Oba except for his upcoming criminal history. So it did start with him stealing female undergarments out of a laundry line. He was given a suspended sentence just because he was a first offender. Oba did commit another crime in 2012. He robbed a convenience store with a knife in Ibaraki Prefecture, and he was sentenced to 3.5 years in jail. He was released in a halfway house, and in this halfway house, he was having a lot of issues with his neighbor, where he would reportedly play loud music, and it would start fights between himself and his neighbor. In Japan, it is usually a custom to be respectful to your neighbors, not playing loud music, being very loud, those sorts of things, right? Proper etiquette. However, Oba's neighbor would call him extremely rude for doing these types of behaviors, and that his place smelled terrible, like garbage terrible. There was also a fight the day before or the day of. Reports kind of are mixed of that again, Oba was playing his music extremely loud. His neighbor decided to come knock on his door, and Oba then threatened to kill him if he ever came back and knocked on his door. Oba was spotted near the studio days before the incident. It's not really said what he was doing, but I'm sure he was just kind of patrolling to see who would come in and out, possibly if the door was open, and how he could make himself go inside. Oba bought the gasoline used in the attack 6.2 miles or 10 kilometers away and walked all the way to Studio 1 And he also carried it on a platform trolley track, which he could have been hit, or the gasoline could have exploded within that time frame, but he was willing to take the chance. The fire began with an explosion at 10:31 when the fire was lit. Police believe mixed air with the gasoline caused the explosion because he didn't have a bomb, but science. You mix stuff together, things go boom. So Shinji Oba entered the front door of the studio carrying the 40 liters or 11 gallons of gasoline. He doused the area, the very front entrance. He doused the area, employees, before lighting himself on fire. He also set himself on fire. I don't believe he did it on purpose, but with him pouring the gasoline kind of wildly, he also caught on fire. Oba was seen leaving the scene. He was shortly chased after by police and employees, and he was then, caught by the police about 100 meters away from the building. While on the ground, it's reported that Oba was shouting that the studio plagiarized his work, which was the reason that he did the crime. There were also knives found lying around the scene that weren't used. It was reported that Oba was planning a knife attack as well at some point, whether it be before he decided to set it on fire and get the gasoline, or maybe if he wasn't set on fire, after he would then start his knife attack. As the fire grew, it did block the entrance for people to escape. About 20 bodies were found on the stairs of the third floor that was leading up to the roof. Some of the bodies were hard to identify due to the degree of burning. On the way to the hospital, Oba admitted to starting the fire for revenge. Life-threatening injuries to his legs, chest, and face, and he did have to recover for 10 months. He did require a skin graft, which he had surgery for, and he was on a ventilator due to respiratory issues. But, duh, he set himself on fire like an idiot. So, Oba received artificial skin for his skin graft. It was due to there no longer being any real skin available because they used it directly for the victims of the fire. It was extremely controversial that Oba even received any skin, artificial or not, just due to the fact of his sentencing was later on to be a death sentence. So a lot of people were very confused why they wasted the artificial skin on Oba if they were just going to sentence him to death either way. Oba was the first case in Japan of artificial skin being used, and it successfully being used on a human being. Oba also mentioned of sympathy that he had towards the victims after he was released from the hospital, just because he said it was some of the best treatment that he's ever received, and people were actually caring for him. I think that gives you a reason to burn down a building, but I digress. May 27th, 2020, after recovering, Oba was arrested on suspicion of murder. He was later indicted on December 16th, 2020, and he pled guilty to the charges September 2023. He did initially plead not guilty, and his lawyers were trying to get him a lighter sentence due to mental incompetence. There was some history of mental issues with Oba. It was believed that he was having social workers check on him regularly due to his mental issues. But the judge denied this and still sentenced him to death, January 25th, 2024. The fire was eventually sustained around 3:19 p.m. and it was extinguished at 6:20 a.m. the next morning. The fire did kill 36 people and it did injure 34, including the suspect. The arson did destroy of course, materials and computers in Studio One. It did cause a delay and cancellation of many projects that they were working on. The president thought it was best to allow his employees to recover before they began working or showcasing any new projects that they had been working on. They were able to save some digitalized original drawings from a server that did survive the fire. The building didn't have any fire hydrants or sprinklers due to its classification as a small office building, which I guess was very common in Japan. I mean, they have thousands upon thousands of buildings. Doesn't really excuse the lack of fire safety, because I mean, if he didn't burn it down, it could be a coffee pot, it could be food that they're reheating, their computers, wires. So it is a little weird that they didn't have regular fire safety for their building. But it was reported that the door was supposed to have employee pass cards, but it was left unlocked. It was said by the president that it was due to them expecting visitors. There was supposed to be a big conference that the president was supposed to attend to at that specific building. But there was also no security systems in place, and it was rumored that the door was always left unlocked during business hours. This attack was reported as the deadliest massacre in Japan since World War II. It was one of the deadliest building fires in Japan since 2001's Myojo, I think that's right, Myojo 56 building fire. It was the first massacre to occur at a studio associated with entertainment and animation company. A professor at Kyoto University at the Disaster Prevention Research Center, he estimated that the second and third floor were almost immediately filled with smoke within at least 30 seconds of the explosion. You can't really see him yet, but there he is. I need to make his legs and ears. But there's one of his bodies. Fire and Disaster Management Agency and the National Police Agency issued a notice regarding gas stations to maintain sales records. They want them to start maintaining those records of people who were purchasing gasoline in refillable containers. So the information that they want them to collect will contain their name, their address, reason of purchase, and the quantity that they purchase. And I'm not sure what that really does other than tell them after. So they keep the record, but then what? They keep the record and then the person goes and burns a building on fire and you at least have the records of it? I'm not really sure how that is supposed to work, but it's a start, right? The start of something. The Fire and Disaster Management Agency formulated guidelines for evacuations and encouraged installations of evacuation ladders. Could also use fire hydrants and sprinklers, but I guess a ladder is a start. I mean, if you're trapped in the second and third floor and you die of smoke inhalation, what does a ladder really do for me at the end of the day? Maybe a sprinkler, fire hydrant. They may help. You never know, right? Don't know unless you have it. After the fire, fans and businesses raised over 3.3 billion yen, which is about 30 million USD. And that's just specifically Japanese. Like the Japanese fans and businesses, they raised that money. And then 2.3 million came from the USA and around the world to help with the studio and the police recover. A special measure was passed through Diet and by Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. That same guy, him, to allow donations to be tax exempt. So they would get the full money, which was pretty nice. President Hidaki asked the names of victims to not be released, just to respect the privacy of the families. However, some families did release their own statements and release the names of their families confirming the deaths. So some of those deaths did include color designer Naomi Ishida, animator, scriptwriter, and director, Yasuhiro Takamoto, and animation directors Yashiji Kaima and Futoshi Nishia. Sorry if I said some of those names wrong. 27 of the 33 survivors did return to work. Several productions, of course, were put on pause and some were canceled again. Those workers came back to work voluntarily. They were not forced to come back to work, but they did want to return to their normal lives. Oba stated that this fire was done because of plagiarism of a novel that he submitted for Kyoto Animation's annual writing contest. President Hidaki stated that there was no record of Oba submitting any works for the contest. However, after the fire and everything calmed down, he was able to find his submitted work, but it didn't go past its first phases that they go through for this contest. So it never really reached the hand of anyone in animation. So some of the similarities that Oba stated were definitely there, but weren't really there. So in Free, there is a school banner in a specific scene, and in Oba's novel, he wrote that there was a banner that appears in a specific scene. In Surun, I believe that's how you pronounce it, the heroine buys a deli sandwich at a specific percent off. I believe in the show it's 30% off, and Oba put it at 50% off. And Keion, the high school boy, is told by his teacher, if you continue like this, you'll repeat the grade. And very similarly, there is a line in Keion that says the exact same thing, or fairly similar. So due to these extremely similar writings in the show to what Oba wrote, he believed that they were plagiarizing his work, and it wasn't fair that they weren't giving him the praise, or they weren't crediting him for that specific idea that they stole from him. Although I'm pretty sure that most of these things are pre-written a lot of times before, well, of course they're pre-written. They're pre-written before the animation comes out, before the manga comes out. So he also may have just seen it in the manga of these animations, or after the anime came out. He could have also just wrote it in there. Or these are all very common things that happen in TV shows and animes. So it's not really a one-shot idea. I mean, they could have taken it from a different show, but it's such a common thing that it still doesn't make sense why he did it. It doesn't make sense. But he did it. So here we are talking about it. On April 28th, 2020, Studio One was demolished. President Hidaki wanted to replace the building with a public green park and a memorial monument. However, a lot of the locals near the studio that burned down did not want a lot of fans, foreigners to come and disrupt their peaceful life. So Hidaki respected their wish and didn't end up building anything for it. The police began to take death threats a little bit more seriously after the fire happened. And they started to look into bigger companies that were having these death threats that were previously reported before the fire had happened, such as Kara, Square Enix, Animate, Clanad, which I guess is a group partnership with an animation company called Key. Again, they were dealing with death threats that did fall on empty ears and made it known to the public that they were not happy with the way the police were treating death threats. So the police finally went and investigated those. A tribute video was created with staff members and families of the victim. This was shown, I believe, during one of their recent releases after the fire, which I believe took place in about late 2020, early 2021. But yeah, that's the story of the Kyoto animation fire. All in all, I think there was probably something wrong with Oba mentally. I mean, definitely that he already had, previous issues. I don't know if I agree with the death sentence that he got, but also he did kill a bunch of people. I don't know how strict Japan's death sentence is. I don't know how quickly it happens. He was just sentenced in January of this year, and I couldn't find any other information regarding his death sentence. So he could still be just sitting in jail, or they could have killed him now at this point. But I couldn't find anything that showed that they did. And I believe he was still looking for an appeal because he didn't want to be sentenced to death. And I don't know the process of that for Japan. But him really thinking that they plagiarized his work, I know that is a real thing that happens. But just from some of the simplicities, is kind of crazy. I mean, you're going to kind of have to let that one go, but, But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, listening, however you're here. I just appreciate you being here with me. Every Wednesday I will be posting 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And yeah, just talking about new things. Let me know what you want to listen to or what you want me to talk about next time down below. Until then, I will be picking my cases. So if you don't like them, tell me what you want me to talk about. And I will research it for you. Yeah, 2 little dudes, 30 minutes. Again, they're not done, but they don't take me very long. We'll see you later. And I'll show you little pictures of them when they're all done. I promise you'll see them. And I'll link the pattern down below. So if you want to do it yourself, you can. Because it's free. So do the pattern because it's free. Okay, love you, bye.